Starting on June 21st, the row by row patterns and kits will be available in each of our store locations. If you're new to row by row, it's sort of a national traveling shop hop. So you can visit participating locations. They have patterns for strip row components to a quilt. If you put together your row and your row quilt and you're the first person to show up at a participating shop with a certain number of rows completed, then there is a gift for you. If you are the first to show up at one of the Meissner locations with our 4 rows incorporated, we have a special bonus as well. So last week, if you missed it, I did give you a little preview of Roseville's strip and some tips for how to create blanket stitch applique. So this week, we're going to take a look at Folsom strip. So this is a variation on a flying geese pattern. Now, as you read through the instructions, do go step by step, and simply follow the instructions will be a lot easier than if you try to think it through. But let me give you some tips on how to put this together effectively. So our strip is comprised of 3 different variations of a flying goose block. So we're going to start by sewing the corner piece to a triangle. We then have a little bridging strip. It's cut longer than is needed because it's easier in this case to stitch and then trim. We'll then add another triangle and then what I'm calling a little joiner triangle. So let's start by sewing these 2 units together. When I align my fabrics, when I'm sewing triangles to either side of my center triangle, I like to line up the straight edge of the bottom and the long portion of the triangle. Technically, what you're looking for is a 1/4 inch tip sneaking out past the bottom triangle. But by aligning the bottom edge and the side edge, that should happen for you automatically, assuming that you have cut your fabric accurately. I like to use a stiletto to hold those little points in place so that they stay right along the edge of my 1/4 inch foot. I'm going to finger press the fabric back so that the seam allowance is to the end piece. Next, we're going to take our bridging strip. On our finished strip, that's the area that we see here. We want it aligned with the long straight edge of the triangle, and you can see that it's extending out on both ends. We'll position this under our foot and again stitch, keeping that 1/4 inch seam. When we turn this back, the next step will be to trim straight across here and straight across here. Now our strip has been trimmed so that the bottom is even and the top is even. This makes for a much more accurate strip than trying to piece this parallelogram shape to your triangle. So the next step is to add the next joining triangle, which will go here. We'll line it up. And you will have a little tip that's peeking out, and that's correct. You'll know that this is positioned accurately if that stitching comes right here to that point where the 2 pieces meet. And press it open. Okay, the next piece is a little bridging triangle. Now I'm calling it a bridging triangle because it gives us enough width this way to finish the unit, but it doesn't need to complete the full strip. This is going to be just a little fabric savings for you at home. So we're going to let the tip of the triangle, the joining triangle, sneak out past the top of our strip. I would suggest that you do press before you go on to this next step. Position your fabric so that at least a 1/4 inch is sticking out back here. We're going to bring our presser foot down and stitch. And then your final step for this unit will be to cut here to square it up to create a segment. A final tip for those of you that are a little newer, there is an instruction or a direction to trim the dog ears. The dog ears are these little points that result when you're joining several triangle segments together. And you'll just use the rotary cutter to trim right across here. And then you'll do the same thing here and here. Resist the urge to leave them in your quilted project, as it'll add just excessive bulk in your seams.